The movie 300 is an almost literal adaptation of Frank Miller's graphic comic book, which in turn draws inspiration from the historical event, but incorporates elements of fiction and artistic interpretation. In this video, I won't dwell heavily on the obvious historical inaccuracies, such as the digitally created press cubes. Instead, I'm going to tell you whom the Spartans actually threw off the rock Taygetus, why Spartan girls were so liberated in that wild time, how contemporaries actually spoke of King Xerxes, and of course, I will recount the feat of the Spartans. Additionally, I will explain how even Herodotus and Diodorus misled everyone regarding this feat. So let's dive into it. The movie begins with a scene based on a famous fairy tale legend. According to the legend, when a baby was born, it was carefully examined by the elders. If they found any physical defects, the baby was thrown into the gorges in the mountains of the Taygetus. However, modern archaeologists cast doubt on this story as repeated studies of the foothills show that, in fact, this place was used for executing criminals and murderers, as evidenced by numerous skeletal remains, mostly of people over 18 years of age. Fans of conspiracy theories, however, like to claim that the remains of infants could be hidden under numerous rockfalls, and, in general, the bones of infants are more fragile, so they are supposedly more difficult to preserve. However, serious scientists usually do not adhere to such a theory. By the way, the movie accurately conveys the essence of the training of future Spartan warriors, although some aspects are exaggerated. While no one hunted barefoot in the snow, the training was indeed harsh. In Sparta, a child did not belong to his family. He was considered to be the property of the state from birth. Families acted as breadwinners, ensuring that the new generation of Spartans survived their early years. At the age of 7, boys were taken to foster homes, where they underwent rigorous training in weapons and military arts. This system produced some of the best warriors of the time, but was marked by extreme discipline and brutality. Young Spartans practiced with weapons outdoors, regardless of weather conditions. They were shaved bald to maintain hygiene and prevent lice, and warm clothes were also forbidden. The boys had to make their own beds using hay and reeds. They also didn't get much food in order to accustom their bodies to scarcity and to self-sufficiency, and so that young men would be able to procure their own provisions. In reality, the Spartans had a lean physique, which provided them with excellent endurance rather than the bulky muscle mass depicted in the movie. To supplement their meager rations, young men would resort to sneaky raids on nearby settlements. However, if caught, they faced merciless punishment, often through scourging. These disciplinary measures were used not only to deter theft, but also to instill resilience to physical pain and to develop the ability to bear troubles with fortitude and patience. Despite their military prowess, the Spartans neglected science and culture, considering them unnecessary in their militaristic society. This very neglect may have contributed to their eventual downfall, according to many historians. The Spartans firmly believed that a true warrior should prioritize cunning and cleverness over scholarly pursuits. As part of their training, they were taught logic and philosophy, with special emphasis on cultivating concise and clear communication skills. The ability to express themselves clearly and succinctly was highly valued in Spartan society. Here is an example of Spartan brevity that will forever go down in history. King Philip II of Macedon, who had managed to conquer most of Greece, sent a letter to Sparta warning, "I advise you to surrender immediately, because if my army enters your lands, I will destroy your gardens, enslave the people, and destroy the city." The reply letter from the Spartans contained only one word: if. At the age of 18, a Spartan youth left the foster home, and from that moment on, he was allowed not to shave his hair and grow a beard. He was free to find a girl and start a family. However, the young Spartan remained under the supervision of an elder mentor and continued honing his skills. This mentoring system fostered a strong sense of responsibility and camaraderie among the Spartans. Older warriors guided and supported the younger ones in their journey to become formidable defenders of their state. It was a vital part of their society and played a significant role in shaping the next generation of Spartan warriors. This state of affairs contributed to the spread of homosexual relationships in Spartan society, even though such relationships were strictly frowned upon in Sparta. This is why King Leonidas in the movie is so dismissive of the Arcadians, for whom such homosexual relationships were the norm.
Well, that's an easy choice for us, Arcadian. Spartans never retreat.
In Sparta, the upbringing of girls was surprisingly progressive for its time. According to the ancient Greek philosopher Plutarch, their education was similar to that of boys, with the only difference being that girls received military training within their parents' homes. From a young age, Spartan girls were considered full members of society and active citizens of their country, participating in public affairs. This position of women in society was highly uncommon for that era. Therefore, in the movie, the Persian ambassador becomes furious when Queen Gorgo, Leonidas' wife, openly rebukes him during the negotiations. Spartan women enjoyed unique privileges, such as the right to legally own property and inherit real estate. Among all the women in ancient Greece, Spartan maidens were renowned for their exceptional beauty. This reputation even finds its way into Greek mythology. The reason for the Great Trojan War, according to Homer, was the kidnapping of the most beautiful woman of all, Helen the Beautiful, who was the daughter of Zeus and a Spartan girl. Thus, the most famous ancient Greek poet confirms the beauty of the Spartan maidens. Queen Gorgo, portrayed by Lena Headey, was the daughter of King Cleomenes I. She married her father's brother Leonidas, who later ascended to the throne. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus describes Queen Gorgo as a beautiful and highly perceptive woman. It is not mentioned in the movie, but shortly before Xerxes' invasion of Sparta, the exiled king Demaratus, who had sided with the Persians, sent home a clay tablet covered with wax. Only Queen Gorgo realized that she needed to scrape off the wax, revealing a warning about the impending Persian invasion of Sparta. At the head of the vast Persian army was King Xerxes I.
Doesn't change the fact that your husband has brought war upon us.
You are wrong. Xerxes brought it forth, and before that his father Darius at Marathon.
Leonidas' wife speaks of Xerxes' father, King Darius, who initiated the Greco-Persian Wars. Darius was defeated in his attempt to invade Greece in 490 BC at the Battle of Marathon. Xerxes ascended to the throne in 486 BC, inheriting a vast empire and commanding countless armies. Determined to fulfill his father's ambitions, he set his sights on conquering Greece. As for the personality of Xerxes, there are diametrically opposed opinions. Many ancient Greeks and Romans described him as a characterless and shallow successor to his great father, easily swayed by the influence of others and burdened with immense vanity. The ancient Roman historian Marcus Junianus Justinus wrote of him, "Xerxes himself was always seen first in flight, last in battle. He was timid in danger and boastful." On the other hand, Herodotus presented a contrasting view, depicting Xerxes as a tall and statuesque man at the peak of his powers. According to Herodotus, he was an experienced warrior and a wise state leader. These positive qualities were also attested by Xerxes' Persian contemporaries, who supported Herodotus' version of Xerxes' personality. According to Herodotus, the Persian army numbered 1,700,000 warriors. And according to the version of the ancient Greek historian Diodorus of Sicily, the unthinkable 4 million warriors. However, taking into account realities of that time, it is simply impossible to keep a multi-million army, and from the point of view of maintenance of its provisions and from the point of view of logistics. Herodotus and Diodorus may have succumbed to the misinformation used by the Persians to intimidate the Greeks, or they deliberately exaggerated the number of enemy troops, which would further immortalize the already great feat. According to modern historians, the size of Xerxes' army was estimated at the most optimistic figure of 200,000 soldiers, and more realistic estimates range from 60 to 80,000 people. The number of Greek armies is estimated differently in various sources, ranging from 5,920 to 12,000 people. The figure 300 represents the personal guard of King Leonidas. But besides the Spartan bodyguards, the Greek army included soldiers from other independent city-states. Xerxes intended to transport his army across the Dardanelles Strait. To achieve this, the Persians constructed 2 pontoon bridges on floating bases across the strait. Each bridge had a length of approximately 1,300 meters. Slaves from various parts of Asia were compelled to participate in this massive construction effort. However, a severe sea storm destroyed the constructed bridges, resulting in the loss of many Persian soldiers' lives. In the movie, it is depicted that the storm destroyed the Persian flotilla instead of the bridges. Enraged by this setback, Xerxes ordered the execution of all supervisors responsible for the bridge construction. He also commanded Persian soldiers to whip the sea as a means of appeasing the tumultuous element. Surprisingly, these measures seemed to have an effect. In August 480 BC, the Persian army arrived at the Thermopylae Gorge. The name Thermopylae means warm gates in translation. This name comes from the 2 nearby hot sulfur springs. As for the width of the gorge, there's a point where the road becomes so narrow that only a single cart can pass through. On average, the passage is about 60 paces wide, which is roughly equivalent to around 40 meters. For the Greeks, the main task was to delay the advance of the Persian army by positioning their forces at the narrowest point along the path of Xerxes' army. This strategy aimed to neutralize the enemy's numerical advantage. In contrast to the Greeks, the Persians could not remain stationary for an extended period due to their rapid consumption of resources from the captured lands. Not only the Greek land forces were involved, but the Greek fleet also played a crucial role. A fleet of Greeks positioned themselves in the Strait of Artemisia to halt the Persian ships. The naval battle that occurred there would be recorded in history as the Battle of Artemisium. The second movie, 300 Rise of an Empire, revolves around these events. Xerxes' army comprised not only Persians but also representatives from numerous conquered peoples and various barbarian tribes. According to the detailed description provided by Herodotus, the Persian warriors dressed in soft silk clothes and wore armor made of chainmail crafted from metal scales. They carried a sword dagger called an akinak, a large bow with reed arrows and shields woven from metal rods. In contrast, the enslaved barbarian tribes and invaded peoples were much worse equipped, to the extent that they used wooden helmets as protective gear, and their weapons consisted of clubs or low-quality spears. The king of Sparta, Leonidas, was the third of 4 sons born to the Spartan king Anaxandrides. With the passing of 2 of his older brothers, the path to the throne opened for Leonidas. During the Battle of Thermopylae, Sparta was celebrating the sacred holiday of Carnea, which also happened to coincide with the 75th Olympic Games. The inhabitants of Sparta held such deep fear of angering the gods by neglecting their traditions that they initially chose to delay sending their forces to aid the Greeks until after the conclusion of the holiday. However, King Leonidas understood the impossibility of further delay and, in contrast to tradition, proceeded to Thermopylae as depicted in the movie. The Greek army constructed a low barricade of heavy stones to further obstruct the pass through the narrow passage at Thermopylae. By mid-August, the Persian army had arrived on the shore near the town of Trachis, just before the entrance to the gorge. According to legend, a local resident, while attempting to convey the vastness of the Persian army to the Greek forces, uttered the phrase, "If they unleash their arrows, the cloud of arrows will blot out the sun." It appears that the filmmakers were particularly fond of this legend. Xerxes unleashed the full force of his army against the Greeks. Initially, the most capable units entered the battle. According to Diodorus, the first wave of attackers consisted of soldiers who were close relatives of Persians that had died in the Battle of Marathon 10 years earlier. The Greek warriors stood shoulder to shoulder. Though outnumbered, they surpassed the Persian soldiers in courage and valor. The Greeks protected themselves with shields that offered complete coverage of their bodies. In contrast, the Persians were ill-prepared for combat in a confined space. Their small shields failed to provide adequate protection. The armies of Midian and various barbarian tribes simply crashed against the Spartan formation. Infuriated, Xerxes then dispatched his personal guard, a unit known as the Immortals, to enter the battle. One version suggests that the name originated from the practice of immediately replacing a fallen immortal with another warrior, thus ensuring a constant number of soldiers in the squad, which was fixed at 10,000. Similar to the Spartans, the Immortals received rigorous military training from a young age. They donned leather armor and wicker shields, and were equipped with spears and bows. However, the Spartans, employing a tactic of feigned retreat followed by sudden counterattacks, shattered the cohesion of the enemy's formations and managed to achieve victory. Spartan losses on the first day were as minimal as 3 men. On the second day of the battle, the Persian hordes also attempted unsuccessfully to break through the Greek formation. Suddenly, Xerxes had a stroke of luck. A resident of Trachis named Ephialtes was brought to him. Ephialtes was well acquainted with the terrain and was willing to reveal a secret path to the Persians. This presented an opportunity for the Persians to bypass the Greek positions and attack them from the rear. Subsequently, all the inhabitants of Trachis sided with Xerxes, driven by their long-standing envy of the power held by dominant Greek peoples like the Spartans and Athenians. They were also in awe of the might of the Persian army. Ephialtes, shown in the movie, was only one of the first traitors. Legend has it that he held a personal grudge against King Leonidas, as the Spartan king had not permitted him to join the army. However, it wasn't because Ephialtes was portrayed as a stunted freak in the movie, but rather because the privilege to fight alongside the Spartans had to be earned. On the evening of the second day, 20,000 immortals followed Ephialtes to bypass the Greek position. At dawn on the third day, the Phocians warned King Leonidas that the Persian army was approaching from the rear. Half a century after the battle, Seneca and Plutarch quoted Leonidas's final address to his soldiers: "Prepare a hearty breakfast, Spartans, for we dine in the underworld." A small group of Greeks engaged in the final battle with the Persians at a distance from their previous positions, in a location where the passage had already widened considerably. They no longer expected to survive. Their goal was to die gloriously. King Leonidas fell in battle before the Persian detachment, led by Ephialtes, could approach from the rear. A substantial reward was promised by Sparta for the head of the defector Ephialtes, but it was never received. Ephialtes was killed in a dispute with a fellow countryman, a certain Athenades of Trachis. This quarrel had no connection to Ephialtes' betrayal or the bounty on his head. Dilios, the sole surviving Spartan character portrayed in the movie, was an invention of Zack Snyder. This character serves the purpose of an unreliable narrator. Therefore, all the fantastical elements depicted on screen can be perceived as Dilios' subjective interpretation of the enemy's threat. Thank you for watching the video to the end. I hope you had a good time. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You'll discover plenty of other captivating videos waiting for you there.